Please welcome from Idaho Technology Council, Jay Larson.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you and welcome to the Idaho Technology Council's Capital Connect series, where we highlight the accomplishments of the companies driving billions of dollars of capital across the state throughout the year. So much is happening in Idaho right now. Allison Johnson, can you come up here and tell us about the Capital Connect mission? Let's hear it for Allison. Welcome, Allison. Welcome. You know, the Idaho Technology Council is excited to have you as the Idaho Technology Council Connect Advisory Team co-chair. And with you and co-chair Blake Hansen from Alturas Capital, who's traveling right now, or he'd be with us today.
Yeah. Blake, we miss you. You missed the smoke. Very exciting times here. I'm super excited to be here, and we're excited to bring a team of industry leaders and investors committed to growing Idaho's innovative economy together. Each month, the ITC and the Capital Connect Advisory Team will be showcasing some amazing Idaho businesses right here on the Capital Connect series. And soon, we're going to be in person with the 50 to the A celebrations, showcasing Idaho's startup community by highlighting companies that have received Series A funding this year.
And right on this stage last month, we had Rich Stuppy, Jim Gassaway, and Brad Wiskerson from the Capital Connect series when they talked about the Count Equifax acquisition.
Yeah, that was great. They were an awesome first guest. And this month, we'll be showcasing another amazing acquisition. Preco Electronics has been developing world-class automotive and safety products for decades right here in Idaho.
So Preco isn't a fantastic company. And Sensata Technologies, let me tell you a little about them. They're a global industry technology company and a leading provider of sensors, recently completed the acquisition of Preco Electronics. Through this acquisition, Sensata and Preco Electronics are working together to expand their capabilities and product portfolio by continuing to develop advanced radar systems for heavy-duty vehicle and off-road autonomy vehicles.
Stay tuned as we welcome this month's Capital Connect series guest, Jim Bean, General Manager of Preco Electronics, now a Sensata technology company. It'll be a great story to hear.
Oh, fantastic, and you'll love Jim. So welcome back. This is Jay Larson, and I am here with Jim Bean, who's been a major force at Preco since 1997.
Correct.
Where he's been the CEO. And Jim, this is just a pleasure and an honor to have you on with us today on Capital Connect.
Thanks.
Can you give us, go back and just give us the history of Preco, because Preco Electronics started back in, what, 1947?
1947.
Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. The company started in like you just said, 1947. Ed Peterson had just returned from World War II. He was a pilot. And he started a company, and it's actually, Preco's an acronym. Peterson Rebuilt and Exchange Company is what that stands for. Wow. And Ed was an avid pilot, and he started flying into the backcountry when they were doing all of the construction along the Snake River, and these huge pieces of equipment would have problems during the week, and he would pick up pieces and parts of those equipment. He actually had a motorcycle that he had put a hinge in the middle of and folded it up so it'd fit on his airplane. He'd fly up into a backcountry runway, and he'd unfold the motorcycle and drive to the work site and pick up the parts that were not working, bring them back to Boise, repair them, and fly them back the next week. Because you can't, if you think about these job sites back in the 40s, you can't just pick up these huge pieces of equipment and drive them to Boise for repair. You need to pick up the parts and bring the parts back. And so that's what he was rebuilding and exchanging electronic parts for these for this heavy equipment.
So when they were putting the dams or whatever?
Oh, yeah, when they're damming up the Snake River, and yeah, he was very active in that. And so, but Ed was at his very core of kind of a lifelong frustrated inventor. He's always thinking of things to come up with, inventions, and they're having trouble at these job sites where they're actually backing over people and injuring and killing workers, and they actually got to a point where they'd have a flag person behind a vehicle or some way of letting someone know that danger was approaching. And Ed came up with the idea of an electronic backup alarm. Every time they put the vehicle in reverse, it would set off a tone, and then that would alert the driver. So he came up with that invention, and he patented it. And that's really what set the company on a journey.
That's
right?
like amazing. So that was the patent. Whenever you heard a backup alarm, that was really Preco and Ed Peterson's brainchild, right?
Yeah, you come in the lobby of the building today, and you'll see actual photographs of his original patent are hanging on the wall.
Wow.
And he patented that, but Ed, like I said, was at the core an inventor, but he wasn't a business person per se. So he hired Jack Robertson to come in and run the company. Jack had a background at IBM, and he was just a great operator. And he came in and actually put the business together so it could grow. He worked with Caterpillar and got the contract with them to use the backup alarms, and the business just blossomed from that point. That was in, I would say, in the 80s, and then from that point the company got into a mode of acquiring different businesses. So we acquired Santa Clara Plastics, which became SCP Global Technologies. And Mark Peterson, Ed's son, came on board and he actually worked at Preco for a while, and he worked at Santa Clara Plastics for a while, and then he bought the business from his dad. And so when Mark became the sole owner of the business, and from there we acquired Ampro Computers out in California, and things just kind of started coming together, and SCP grew to a huge company.
Yeah.
And the Preco organization grew, and I joined the company in 1997. I'd moved out here from the Bay Area. My history before coming to Idaho was tech companies.
Yeah, you had tech companies. I mean, you were responsible for a lot of the manufacturing that took place, like at Apple, and those type of things, supply chain, and all these other type of things, right?
I actually went to work for. While I was in college, I worked on a co-op program for Fairchild Camera and Instrument. Oddly enough, on the Indian Reservation in Shiprock, New Mexico.
Okay.
When I got out of school,
from New Mexico State, you were
Las Cruces. Yes,
yeah.
Aggie at Las Cruces. And when I got out of school, my ambition as a 20-something was to live on the West Coast, live in the San Francisco area. So I started applying for jobs, and I ended up going to work for National Semiconductor. Oh. And they were about a $70 million company then that had just hired Charlie Spork, and it grew and expanded, and worked for National in California for a few years, and then got an opportunity to go live and work overseas and run a manufacturing operation at the ripe old age of 27 in Singapore.
Oh, wow.
So I went to Singapore for a while, and then I went to Hong Kong. There was a business unit there for National, and then some friends of mine had left National and gone to work for Apple Computer. I couldn't even really figure out what Apple Computer was, but I got an opportunity to go to Carrollton, Texas, and see the manufacturing plant there. My reaction to that plant was, wow, if this company goes out of business, we can make airplanes. This is a huge building. So,
is that right?
So, yeah, it was three enormous buildings.
That's great.
So I worked for Apple, and we set up their worldwide manufacturing operations, one in Cork, one in Mill Street Town, one in Singapore. That was an incredible ride. I joined Apple just after they went public, so I was listening to people and all of the stories about what it's like to take a company public. And a number of years passed, and I had an opportunity to go to work for yet privately held Sun Microsystems.
Oh, wow.
Scott McNeely had taken over their job as CEO, was looking for someone to run the operations business side of the business. We hit it off, and so I went to work for Sun to do their manufacturing operation, which was quite a ride too.
Well, I think this is why this is so important to go through this history that you have on this. Is that you really? By the way, did Ed grow up in the? Ed and his brother, did they grow up here in Boise?
They were Boise. I don't know that they were natives, but they grew up here. Yeah.
They grew up here. Okay.
Yeah, he lived in Boise before he went into the service.
Before he went into the service. Mm-hmm. Okay, but it's great to be able to see how you have these great minds, like inventors, like Ed has,
yep.
or it was, and then understand how you need to be able to bring other resources and other visionary people behind their work so you can continue to grow and scale that, because everything has that. So, and you've been a great part within what's gone with Preco. So let me ask a question on this. So now you've grown the company. You kind of sold off the backup alarm business.
We did.
Which is interesting because you sold that to the company that Ed's brother started, Echo, right?
In a roundabout way.
Yeah.
A company called Berwind back in Philadelphia bought Echo, which was the company Ed's brother started. And the day they finished that acquisition, they called me and said, we'd like to buy Preco, because we think you ought to put those two businesses together. It just makes sense.
Right.
And we thought, well, okay, maybe we can do this. So that's how that came together. But Berwind Industries actually bought Preco and Echo, the backup alarm business, and then had essentially most of that market.
And that market now, and then you kind of have this other pivot point, right, where you come out and you're really looking at these radar, big machinery at mining sites, other type of things. So is this? That's a big shift that took place, right?
Yeah, you got to credit Mark with a lot of that, because when I joined in 1997, he had already licensed the technology from Lawrence Livermore to do this pulse radar product, because the vision was that the backup alarm was fantastic because it let somebody behind a large vehicle know that danger was approaching, but nothing was telling the driver that they were about to have a collision or or run over someone that they didn't want to run over, right? So that the driver was pretty much oblivious and depended on the alarm alerting whoever was behind them. And these vehicles have enormous blind spots. Yeah. And I'll get this wrong, but let's say you're in a haul truck and you're sitting in the driver's position and you look off to the right side. It may be a couple hundred feet before you can see the ground. So there's a large zone there that we call a dead zone, where the driver cannot see what's going on. And the same thing's true with backing. Same thing's true with front and with sides. And there's incredible videos out there on the internet, if you go look at them, about what happens when one of these huge mining haul trucks backs over like an F-150 pickup. The driver doesn't recognize it, and the pickup just becomes flat. And God forbid there's somebody in that, but there's a lot of that going on. So anyway, Mark's vision, the vision of the company, was we need to move that value proposition into the cab. And we need to alert the one person that can do something about it, that they're approaching something that they don't want to, whether it's that they're going to hit or run over or kill or whatever. So that's exactly what started that back in 1997. But we didn't commercialize it for a while. We kept working on the product, and it was very expensive technology at the time. And we actually commercialized it to a company called Eaton Corporation that put it on the side of over-the-road trucks.
I see. So that now is really what is the mainstay of what you're doing with Preco now, and why Sensata came in and said they wanted to merge and get this intellectual property that you have.
Yes.
And then have that. So let's go into how the company. What is? I mean, if you look at this whole thing from when you came in 1997 to where it is today, what is the bedrock strength of Preco Electronics?
Well, it's the people. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's the people that make up the company that make it work.
Yeah.
But if you look at Preco from the outside, you see a company that has incredible relationships with anybody and everybody that's in their market, whether it's Caterpillar or John Deere or Case New Holland in the construction and ag business, or any of the over-road trucking folks in the U.S. and in Europe. Everybody knows Preco because of our backup alarm history, and they also know Preco because of what we've done on the side object detection and the rear radar. So what you see, the key core feature about Preco is this knowledge of the industry and this incredible intellectual property that we developed over time of developing radar systems that our customers say, hey, they just work. We really like this product because it works.
Yeah, and what's interesting at all these mining sites, or all these other places like that, safety is like one of the biggest things you always have on the site, right? They don't want to have one of these big run over anybody or have the accident. So this is a major safety opportunity, isn't it?
I don't know if you've been on the sites or not, but typically they'll have so many days accident free, and they tout that and they project that, and that's worldwide. That's not just That's not just a North American
So
thing.
they should have it so it would be so many days, like 1,000, thanks to Preco.
Yeah, exactly. That'd
Right?
be great. We haven't negotiated that yet. But
Well, I need to come help you with it.
You can come help us with
Obviously,
it.
that's. So it's interesting. So innovation, how's that played with Preco?
Oh, it's a mainstay of what we're doing. We talk about this all the time. It's to be at the forefront of this technology is really important. But to get out on the bleeding edge of the technology is something we really don't do because we're not a research company, we're a development company.
Okay.
So the core research of the technologies that we use, you will find elsewhere. You'll find it in the semiconductor industry, you may find it in automotive. But the ability to take that technology and develop something that works in a rugged environment, that's our sweet spot. Because a lot of these sensor products that are on cars, that they work incredibly well, but you put them on this heavy equipment and they don't last weeks, hours. They just don't. So being able to ruggedize it and then being able to make it solve the problem that the industry is trying to solve, which in our case is large vehicles, that's the innovative piece. That's the part that we bring to the party. So we'll take a core radar technology, like we took the Lawrence Livermore technology, and we will develop an end product that the users need. So I think if you combine together all this broad-based industry knowledge with this ability to innovate and with this ability to take this core technology and develop end products, that's the magic that makes it.
Oh, I love that. I love the idea too. This backup alarm now has become your place in the industry and how you've built on that, and then you've really made, you've built on your reputation, what your products are known for. So now Sensata comes in, they purchased Preco last July, right?
Yes, correct.
And then what do you see now because of the assets that you have and the strengths you have, and then Sensata Technologies comes in, what do you see as the future? What's going to change because of that?
Well, Sensata is an amazing company. They've been around for 100 years. We've been around since 1947. They've been around for over 100 years. And they are in the sensor business or in the technology business, and they have been for a long, long time. And they actually have incredible relationships with the same customer base that we have. So if you go to anybody we do business with, whether it's Daimler or PACCAR or Caterpillar or John Deere, they all know Sensata. And in fact, you probably can't walk around today without interacting with some product that Sensata has developed. Like if you have tire pressure sensors on your car, well, that's a Sensata product. So,
wow.
So they are amazing in terms of their breadth. And so what they've done is they've come in and they purchased this little small company in Boise, Idaho, and they've taken their name, brand recognition, and their size and their ability to make markets move, and they've brought us to the table. So while we worked really, really hard, and I'm really proud of what we did. We worked really hard to get an audience with the Caterpillars and John Deeres and of the world. Sensata has that relationship. They've had it for decades and decades and decades, and they're helping us. Okay, picture this. We built the organization and we created a ceiling of where we could get to. Sensata turned that ceiling into a floor, so we have something to stand on and build on, and it's amazing. We have gotten opportunities in the last year that we would have only hoped to have a chance at. We've just gotten the ability to sit down and negotiate at the table, and it's been amazing.
And it's been amazing because they have supply chain, they have connections, they have ones that you didn't have that are going to help accelerate your applications and with other companies and other parts of the industry, right?
Oh, absolutely. You think about even the day-to-day problems that we're trying to solve today. It's not like this. It's like they have an app for that, but they have a person for that, right? So they have a section of their organization. They have centers of excellence. They have people that focus on the things that we would have as a shared responsibility within one individual. They would probably have a single person responsible for that. They have close to 20,000 people. That's amazing. So for us to be able to grab on to that infrastructure is just allowing us to become a much bigger company than we even imagined we could become. So they're able to make investments, and that's the one thing that I think we saw when we came up with the idea, or we didn't come up with the idea. They came to us, yeah, and there were actually 3 of them at about the same time, which was kind of uncanny. Came to us and wanted to talk about purchasing the company on the basis of where we were going, not taking a look at where we were and looking backwards.
Wow.
And that's what made us excited about
So
it.
that, if you had 3 people, that helped you drive the price up a little bit, right?
One would hope.
Yeah. Now that is, we can't tell you about the price. It was over $7 billion. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
It was not disclosed. So
It was not.
it was, but
And it probably never will be.
And probably never will,
For what I can
right?
tell, yeah.
so this is great. So if take the next one. How did you have this capital for part of your business? I mean, in other words, every company needs to have capital to be able to do things. Can you talk about that at all? Is there anything unique that hit Preco during your tenure?
Well, Mark is an amazing entrepreneur himself. You know Mark.
Yeah.
And he's an incredible guy, and he is not afraid to take a risk. And that's been amazing. He took a risk on our management team. He took a risk on this business, and he invested money in this business. We got to a point a few years before the acquisition where we decided we either had to double down on our investment in engineering or we needed to find somebody who would.
Yeah.
And we talked about that openly. Mark was very much a part of the company. He's a brilliant mind, and a good friend and a good businessman. And he looked at all the opportunities, and he said, I think I'd like to invest in that. So he did. So he took a chance on the management team and on me to some degree, and we invested in that business, and we moved from the technology we're using to the next level of technology, and now we're on our 3rd basic generation of technology now. And he made that investment, but that he didn't go out and find a partner, because we talked about that. He didn't go out and find a bank or venture capitalist to get behind him. He did those investments himself. But that took it to that. If you think about it, that took it to that ceiling.
Yeah.
But Sensata, they have significant access to capital that an individual doesn't have.
Well,
so they took it to the next level.
They took it to the next level. So he doubled down, basically, Mark did, because he reinvested in the company with other type of things of this
Correct.
new technology. And I think it's great because sometimes you take a look at it, like Genghis Khan, right? One of the most big, ferocious leaders that came around. He couldn't pass it on to the next generation because his kids didn't understand it. But it's great to see Ed and then Mark, and how Mark still had this innovative part that Ed had, and he was able to even build Preco even more, and then take the management team like bringing you in, and then take it to the next level with Sensata. So it's a great story.
Yeah, Mark was a huge part of the culture of the company. I mean, he actually worked in the business before he bought the business.
Yeah.
We had an operation back in Morton, Illinois, and we built a building back there, and Mark went back there shortly after graduating, before Zach or Sam or any of his kids were born. And,
Yeah.
And he was, the story back there is that Mark's the guy that hung the toilets in the bathroom. I mean, he got that involved in growing his business. And yet he maintained that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
And that, he didn't have to make that investment. He could invest in other things, but he chose to invest in what he believed in. And he did that. So
that is so good. Well, just let everybody know, Jim and I got to know each other because Mark's son, Zach, and my son, Skyler, played on the same Timberline basketball team. They took 3rd place at state one year, and I got to meet Jim. I said, I didn't know who you were at the time. And you loved going and watching those games.
Yeah.
And what was the fun part is that Mark recorded all those games.
He did, that's right.
So Skyler has all of these games that they played in because of Mark's videography skills.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Well, let me just jump.
That's a true story.
That's a true story. Yeah, very. And Mark's a great pilot too.
He is.
Let me ask you a question here. So now with all the work that you've done with Sun Systems, with Apple, I mean all the work where you've been, who's the most innovative person that you know?
I think the most innovative genius that I've come across in my entire life is Steve Jobs. That's hands down. I don't know how to say. It would be really hard for me to put anybody above that.
Yeah.
Just because of who he was, and he was amazing. Just absolutely amazing.
So tell us about him a little bit, because with your work there at Apple, you read a lot of things about Steve. From his own book, from the work that he did with Pixar.
Yep.
And they kind of have him very hard sometimes to deal with. Tell us a little bit about what your interaction was with Steve.
He was hard to deal with. There's no doubt about that. I went to Apple to run the flagship manufacturing operation for Apple at the time was the Apple II group, and that was basically the K through 12 product that we sold worldwide for years and years and years. And then Steve was off to the side developing the Macintosh. And so we made the money, he spent the money. If that's a good analogy, you know, because what he was doing was developing things. And thank God he did, because he did a great job. And what the product is, it speaks for itself, and it just launched the company. But he was very committed to his beliefs. The folks on the production lines just absolutely loved him. You know, he'd come down to Carrollton, he'd sit on a stool and they'd play a saxophone and just interact with people. It was very, very, very casual and interactive.
So he was very personable.
Oh, he was hugely personal. I should say he could be very personal. He could also be very hard-nosed. But his mind was just amazing.
So from a leadership standpoint, you felt like an innovative standpoint. He really stands up to all of the standards you're sitting there thinking, and his reputation is very well grounded. I mean, he's been.
I'd be hard pressed to find another name to put above that.
Yeah,
at least in my career.
Yeah. Well, you know, this has been fantastic. So last question for you. What do you think about the innovative ecosystem we have in Idaho and in Boise? And if you have any suggestions for the system, if somebody's talking about how they can start a company, any thoughts there?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I've been in the business of hiring people to come to work for a small company in Boise since '97, and what I tell people constantly is, if you love the outdoors, you'll love Boise. If you'll love Idaho, and you belong here, right? And I think that what folks are looking for is a broader base than, oh my gosh, this Preco organization looks uncanny, I got to join that. But they think about, well, what are my other alternatives? How broad of a footprint can we get?
Yeah.
So I think from just a culture point of view and from a statewide point of view, we need to broaden that footprint, and we need to be able to have more companies like Preco, and there are more coming up. You've been very instrumental in that. I'm not suggesting there aren't, but I think that being able to widen that is going to be the success in the future.
It's really the strength, right? Because if you take a look at how many employees do you have before Sensata? How many employees?
Oh, it's under 100.
Yeah, so that's a sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
Because you get those are the ones that they figure out some very unique technologies. They're very innovative. They're mobile. They're nimble, and then they can go and scale to the next level, and like you have with Sensata. So,
yes. Yeah.
And the more that we have with that, the stronger our and the more diverse we are, because you play in a technology space that there's not really a lot of this type of technologies in Idaho.
Absolutely.
So it's great having you there.
And we've actually expanded into Arizona as well. We have an operation in Chandler that we've had for a couple of years now, and that's broadening that footprint.
That's great.
And that I think is making people that want to come to work here feel even better that we have a broad footprint. And Sensata's just added to that in enormous ways.
I got my last point is that I was at BYU Hawaii when my son was graduating in supply chain. And the person
actually, he worked for us.
He did. He worked for you.
He did. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I forgot.
No problem, Skylar. I remember you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He works for Micron now, but he got it because of the start at Preco.
Yep.
But he, the person was the president of BYU Hawaii, and another person was teaching
Steve
there.
Wheelwright?
Yes.
I'm friend. We are friends.
Yes, and that's what that was brought up.
Yeah.
That you go there, and it's fun because you go to the North Shore of Oahu, and the people know Jim Bean, because of the work that you did at Apple and other places. So you're world renowned, Jim. Thanks for thanks for making Boise your home and doing all the wonderful work that Preco has done. And that Preco Sensata merger is going to provide tremendous dividends for Idaho. So thanks.
I couldn't be more excited. Thanks for having me, Jay. That's really fun. I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Well, thank you, and thanks to Jim Bean and to Preco and to Sensata. So thanks again to our presenting sponsors, Holland & Hart, Alturas Capital, and we'd also like to thank St. Luke's, Idaho Central Credit Union, and BR Wealth Management for your continued support of the Capital Connect series. And we hope you will continue to join us on the third Tuesday of each month from 12 to 12:30 as we continue to celebrate the growth of Idaho. And thank you so much, and be safe out there.
Thanks, Jay.